Good afternoon and welcome to Markets Today. My name is Mbithe Mwema and it's always a pleasure to be your host. Today is the middle of the week, so we will be taking a look at what was happening yesterday on the Nairobi Securities Exchange. And you know what happens here on Markets Today every single Wednesday? It's called the Ladies' Night, or rather the Ladies' Afternoon, I beg your pardon. You know why? Because it's a day when we begin to speak to women in technology, understand their businesses, understand the success and business drivers for them, as well as get an overview of what COVID-19 has meant for them in terms of their business models. But before we get into women and technology this particular Wednesday, let's take a look at what was happening yesterday on the NSE. The statistics are coming up. We will start off with the NSE indices. But before I get into the indices, in terms of an overview, yesterday turnover was down 10 percentage points compared to what was traded on Monday. This particular week, the foreign investors have been net sellers. Last week, they were net buyers of the likes of Safaricom, Equity, and a little bit of East African Breweries. This week, we have seen a change in sentiment, and they have been net sellers. We have seen movement in Safaricom, but it's still trading range-bound between the 31 shilling mark and the 32 shilling mark. Not too much movement on Equity and KCB, but let's take a look at the specifics. Behind me, I have the data points for yesterday. The indices, the NSE All Share was down 77 basis points to close the day at 142.98 points. The NSE 20 Share was down 3.83 percentage points to close the day at 1,790.72 points. Last but not least was the NSE 25 Share Index, which was down 7.2 percentage points to close the day at 3,250.99 points. Let's take a look at what was happening by virtue of turnover as well as volume and prices. To start off with turnover, Equity was the top traded stock yesterday with 4.7 million shares traded at 35.65 million shillings for a cumulative turnover of 168 million. Safaricom came in second with an average price of 31.7 with 3.5 million shares traded for a cumulative turnover of 109.5 million shillings. East African Breweries was the third top traded stock. The stock is now at 155 shillings per share and it traded 95 million in terms of turnover yesterday. Absa saw a bit of traction yesterday with 4 million shares traded at an average price of 9.4, giving us a turnover of 38 million. KCB 37.2 was the average price, 129,000 shares is what was traded. The cumulative turnover on the NSE was down 10 percentage points compared to Monday. Let's take a look at what was happening when we're looking at price movements as well as volumes. Top movers, Equity 4.7 million, Absa 4 million shares, Safaricom 3.5 million shares, Kengen 678,000, East African Breweries 617,000. Of the top movers, the surprise one for us this week has been East African Breweries. Last week and this week, we have seen foreign interest on both sides of the trade. That's on the buy side as well as on the sell side, with a lot of interest coming in at 155 shilling mark. Over the last 2 weeks, we did see the price drop down to 152, and that brought in a bit of foreign buying interest. It's now trading at 155 shillings per share. Let's take a look at what was happening in as far as price movement is concerned. On the top gainers, we did have the small caps up there, up and steady. Everready and Home Africa. The one that has been catching our attention for this particular week has been Centum, which is now at 17.95. It was the top traded stock by virtue of price movements on Monday as well as yesterday. It's now at 17.95. We have seen a bit of retail investors picking up this stock on the low. Sanlam Kenya recouped some of the prior day losses. It closed at 11.5 shillings, up 4.55. We also saw a bit of movement on Scan Group, which was down 3 percentage points to close the day at 6.2. The price for Scan Group has been oscillating between 6 and 7.5. When it hit a low of 6, we see retail investors coming in, and then when it comes to about anything between 7 and 8, we see a bit of an exit. So if it's something that you are looking for a short-term opportunity, there could be something here for you. Let's take a look at who the top losers were for the day. Top losers, again, we did have the small caps dominating this particular space. Olympia was down 8.18 percentage points to close the day at 2 shillings per share. East African cables lost 7 percentage points. The key one that stood out was actually Diamond Trust Bank, which was down 3 percentage points to 63 shillings per share. Yesterday, Diamond announced its third quarter earnings. The earnings were down 28% on a year-on-year basis, with the profit after tax coming in at 2.9 billion shillings. This was rather expected because it has been the case for all the banks, with the key point that's bringing down the earnings being the fact that there has been an increment in the loan loss provisions. So something to keep tabs on. But the fact that it's actually come down and it was down 3 percentage points to 63 shillings per share, on a valuation basis, it still continues to look like a bit of a value trap, largely because of the business model that it runs, banking the SMEs, which will certainly be the hard hit in terms of COVID-19. The other one that stood out from the top losers list was Standard Bank, which lost 2.32 percentage points to close the day at 147. Over the last 12 months, the lowest it has actually hit is 145. So it could probably get lower than this, but then if it gets lower than this, it will be something that you want to see if you can buy it for the long term. That's pretty much what was happening yesterday on the NSE. Turnover down 10 percentage points. This particular week, foreign investors are net sellers. We are always tracking what this particular set of investors are doing. They are 65 to 70% of the market, so a very captive market and one that we always keep our eyes on to understand what the sentiment is. Final bit of news was Diamond Trust Bank, and as I had mentioned earlier, this company announced its third quarter earnings, which were down 28 percentage points on a year-on-year basis, largely driven by an increment in the loan loss provisions. So there you have it. That's pretty much what's happening on the financial markets. If we take a look at the macros for Kenya, the key event happening today, tomorrow, and on Friday will be the public hearing for the by the Ministry of Treasury. We are getting into the budget-making process, and for the next 3 days, the Treasury will actually sit in public hearings just to garner any public sentiments in as far as the budget process is concerned. It's neither here or there, but it's important for ages to keep tabs. What is the government thinking when it comes to expenditure? What is it thinking when it comes to revenue? We had a very incisive and articulate conversation on this yesterday. I would encourage you to go to the Metropole TV page on YouTube and follow this conversation. I think the crux of this conversation is this. It's a tough year economically for the government, for you as an individual. Expect taxes to increase, whether at a business level or at a consumption level. Then what does that mean for you? So something to keep tabs on. Public hearings are happening. We will continue to have this conversation, and tomorrow we'll have a deeper dive just to understand what has been the sentiment from the public and what are some of the challenges and opportunities that this particular budget cycle presents. We take a break. When we come back, you know what it's time for. It's an afternoon, it's Wednesday. We don't call it Ladies' Night here in Markets Today, but we call it an afternoon with the ladies in technology. We will be joined by a woman in technology, and she has been running an energy and solar farm. She'll be able to tell us what does her company do, what is the substance of technology in her business, and given COVID-19, does she see a change in her business model or not? I wouldn't let the cat out of the bag as yet. We'll take a break. When we come back, I'll tell you more about our guest in studio. We would like to hear your voice. 20146, that's our SMS line. What would you like to know? Are you a shareholder of Diamond Trust Bank, for instance? Did you follow up on the financials that were announced? Are you a shareholder of Kabasit? We covered that yesterday. Some good numbers there and an opportunity for a dividend yield. Would you like to be a shareholder of any of these companies? Why not give us a shout and to ask us what is it that you want us to answer, and we'll be able to take some time and allocate this for you specifically in our show tomorrow. If that number doesn't work for you, you can reach out to us on social media. That's at Metropole TV on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or at Mbithe Mwema on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or LinkedIn. See you after the break.